so we'll pass it on to Pawan.
Okay. So hello everyone. Welcome to the Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Plan Advisory Committee meeting. First we will do the introductions and then we will do a roll call after that. So it's Pawan Upadhyay, Lake County Water Resources Director.
I'm Ronna Bowers, Regional Coordinator with the Department of Water Resources.
And I'm Quinn Little. I'm the point of contact for the Big Valley Groundwater Basin, the Department of Water Resources.
Rebecca Harper, Lake County Farm Bureau Executive Director.
And Christy Clark, and I'm from Stantec.
Bridget Lowry, also Stantec.
Eddie Teasdale, hydrogeologist with the County Consultants.
Scully backing in one of the ag grips.
Angela Mondell, Lake County Land Trust.
Looks from Lake County Land Trust.
And I'm Laura Garza. I'm with the UC Cooperative Extension, Water and Climate Change Advice.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for being here. We will do the roll call. So yeah, it's me, then Angela.
Yeah.
Rebecca.
Here.
Scott. Villari.
Here.
Sarah, Ryan. Pat.
Here.
David. Okay, so it seems we do have a quorum. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 members present in person. So we'll move to our agenda item number 2, which is the review and approval of the May 7, 2025 meeting minutes.
Under other attendees, it has my old position listed. I believe in May I was at the Land Trust. You can just replace that with Executive Director, Lake County Land Trust. You can put formerly aquatic, the attendee formerly known as.
You actually don't have, you wouldn't be able to accept and file these minutes. I wondered if we had enough people who, a quorum, I think we do, of attendees from the call. So we have you, Val. I wasn't there, so I don't count. Okay. So we have Pat, Sarah doesn't count, and Pat doesn't count, and David's not here. So you're left with Pawan, Scott, who's also not here, and Val.
Yeah.
So that's 2. So you wouldn't be accepted. You want to wait that till the end?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the meeting that we decided, like, that you guys voted to put me on that seat. So you still, I wasn't technically part of the thing.
Yeah. We still are expecting Dave and Scott to come. Sarah sent a note and said she will not be able to make it. So, but the other 2.
Yeah, it was May, believe it or not.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
true.
and you're on there. But you were there somewhere.
Yeah.
So, and so do that. Oh. No, he's here.
Okay.
So when we accept and file the minutes, they'll have to be accepted within the person.
I just have a minor change. I didn't move into.
Did we had only one meeting minutes? Because I was thinking we were.
No, we approved all. You were saying
Okay.
that one, yeah, so it should just be that one.
The director, and but I've been the board president.
Notice it was echoing when you were talking.
Oh,
Alon,
okay.
so I'll leave this partially.
Okay, thank you.
And so with being present, do we have quorum or still no?
No, you still have 3.
We just need Scott for,
Well, in that case, we can move that agenda item to later in the meeting if members in the room approve that.
that we moved this.
Anyone second?
Second. Okay, so we will move to the agenda item number 3, which is the Big Valley GSA 2024 annual report. And I think I did mention in the last meeting that we were a little bit behind on the submission of the report, but it's been submitted and it's been approved already. And then we will have like some updates to be presented by Ed.
Great, thanks, Pawan. So this is kind of a recap from the previous meeting. Not a lot of changes. We did make some updates. I think last time we presented this, it was sort of considered a draft, so we had some adjustments on the water budget. So, recall last time we kind of went through all the main pieces of the annual report, but today I'm just really going to focus in on groundwater use and the storage updates, very similar to what you saw last time, just a couple of different tweaks. So if you kind of go to the next slide. So again, these are just tables that are right outside of the report or extracted from the report itself. And you can kind of see this is sort of groundwater use by sector. Some of it's measured, some of it's sort of extrapolated from land use, but the water usage was a little less in water year 24 compared to water year 23. A little bit more than water year 22, and then a lot less than water years 20 and 2021. So those numbers changed a little bit, I think, from the last slide I showed you. And the next slide kind of pulls all the pieces together. And then specific to surface water usage, these again, a lot of these are estimated based off of diversion. So, it was a little bit less in 24 compared to 23, but I mean, they're such small amounts. There's obviously errors in these calculations, but overall, it kind of is in line with sort of previous usages. I mean, it's less than 100 acre feet, so it's not a lot of water. So, and I'll pause after the next couple of slides here. If you go to the next slide, a lot of information on here, but this is really what we're doing here is we're just, again, this is part of the report, but we're just kind of keeping track of, groundwater storage, which is the purple, domestic pumping, municipal pumping, stream leakage, inflows from Scotts Valley, of the subbasin, outside inflows, ag pumping. We do have some contributions from the lake. So, I mean, this is a lot of information that's kind of compiled, but big picture, if you go to the next slide, which is probably the most important slide, this kind of shows you sort of groundwater storage change, which is the purple bars through time, groundwater pumping, through time, which that's obviously negative. But the big one is the cumulative change, which is the dark black line. So ideally, we want this to kind of hover around zero, right? So we obviously know when it's dry, we're going to use more groundwater. When it's wet, we're going to use less groundwater. But overall, and it's kind of hard to see here, but if you kind of look at the cumulative change since 1988, so picking up the dry periods and the wet periods, the basin actually has a positive of about 600 acre feet. So that's good news for us, right? I mean, yes, water levels bounce around, storage bounces around. If you look at the long-term average, it's sustainable. So this shouldn't be mind-blowing, but it just lets you know that, for the most part, probably because of climate, we're doing okay. I think that's the last slide I have on the annual report. Are there any specific questions or? Yeah.
Maybe everybody else understands this, but if you go back a slide.
Sure.
No, one more, sorry. Agriculture is the only one that uses surface water? Is that what that's saying? I'm trying to understand.
Yes. In the model, that's the way it's set up now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So.
And not a lot.
Yeah, there's no drinking water systems or municipal that take water from the creeks in the Big Valley Basin. They do groundwater.
Okay, so lake is not considered as surface water.
Not in the basin.
Not in the
Because
basin.
Okay,
Outside
just
the boundary.
Okay, get it. I get it. Sorry.
Good question, though.
And under environmental diversions, what's the definition of environmental diversions? Is that not a man-made diversion?
It's when you look at there's an ERIMS database that we get from the state, and then they have specific sort of definitions. So in the environmental diversion section, it's zero. There's nothing in that.
They don't have anything under that category. So why is it included?
Because we just included in the.
So it matches what their template is, but we don't know exactly what that is defined.
No.
Do you guys know what that's defined? Do you know you are?
I do not.
It's a placeholder for something that doesn't fit the other.
It's in their ERIMS database for other areas, but there's nothing in that for Lake County or for Big Valley.
Oh yeah, I'm just curious what it is. What's considered that?
I think it'd be like if let's say you had Sacramento River and you're diverting water off the Sacramento River for environmental flows, then that would be an environmental diversion.
Oh, okay.
Environmental mainstream flow requirement.
Okay. So that could be in the future, depending on the reservoir. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you. And so are the reservoirs in that basin not considered diversions for surface water? Then is that just not included in the?
In the ERIMS database, we're not seeing that data come through.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think there is in an annual report, was there something about the subsidence?
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 Yeah.
There's not any. Okay.
So if I understand you correctly, like where there's dams and they're taking drinking water from it, right? There's, or do they?
I don't think they did.
Island.
No, no drinking water from there.
Okay.
They're just
All right, never
storage.
mind.
Storage.
So I have a question, but not on what you showed. It's on another part of the report. So has everybody done with their questions on the?
Yeah.
So where are we? The implementation tables?
Yeah.
You guys, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that you guys are doing or have that weren't reflected in the table. So I don't know if it's like, you need to update the table, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like,
You talk about in the annual report?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah. So you have like investigate stormwater capture for in lieu use. It says currently applying for grants under this project. You guys have a stormwater resources management plan and the 319 plan that investigated some of that. So you guys have some stuff that's already been done for that area. You guys have, let's see, the Adobe Creek conjunctive use project. It says the implementation activity is pending, currently applying for grants to implement this project. You guys have 2 grants that are currently for that. Rehabilitate Kelsey Creek detention structure, currently applying for grants in the project. You guys were awarded a grant for that. It's in the federal government, but that's something that's like, you've already done the work to apply for it. It's been approved. At some point, there will be $500,000 coming down for you for that, but it's in the federal government. So you should acknowledge that you guys have done work
Right.
and you're meeting some of these. So it,
No, I appreciate it. I had no idea. I mean, I'm not that connected to it, so, but I appreciate
yeah.
the feedback. So we'll probably reach out for the next annual report to get your feedback on that table, because we're not aware of it.
Yeah, and then I don't know at what point this report, if there's any requirement, or you'll have to maybe for the next annual report, the one after that, but the water board did conduct the surface water, groundwater connectivity study, and that result should be coming soon, and a lot of it was focused on Big Valley. So I don't know if you have a requirement to have to include it in this, or at least mention it and maybe
Well, we
reference it.
should, because
Yeah.
it builds this.
Right, but it might further give, you know,
Yeah.
that, yes, there's surface water, there's groundwater, and there's some interaction, but whichever way it
No, I
goes.
appreciate it. We're probably gonna reach out at some point.
Yeah, I sent an email to Todd Abbott with some of the points in there. Implement non-point source discharge control. You don't have anything in that box, but you do have a whole countywide study that we got contractors for that's completed for that. So you have the things that make it look like you're going towards meeting implementation, which
Yeah.
make you look good. So you should make sure to include it.
Perfect.
Good. Can I just ask you if you're gonna be inputting a public comment, adding that up into the Signal portal for documentation of your recommendation?
I mean, it's captured in the minutes, so that's
Right.
part of public comment.
Okay.
Yeah, you guys can call me anytime, but you guys have all the,
yeah, we will be giving some update today.
yeah, because it makes you,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
progress.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, great comment. Anything else? Thank you. Thanks. Comments.
There are some slides about the project update later on this,
Yeah.
so, but not
And
specific.
you have the Scotts Valley, that's like groundwater recharge study too.
Yeah.
I think it's been funded.
That's one that's gonna be added about.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving along, I think the next item we have on the agenda is the Big Valley Groundwater Sustainable Plan 2027 periodic evaluation. So as you might already know that like we have like 2 requirements in our like sustainable plan is like an annual reporting, and one is like the 5-year periodic evaluation. So for this year, we have already submitted the annual report, but the 5-year is coming due at 2027. And then we have like, so these are the requirement that why a periodic evaluation is needed. So some of them item would be like a reality check on the progress, like what we have done, confirms whether basin is actually trending towards the 20-year sustainability goal by comparing monitoring data to the plan measurement objective and minimum threshold, adaptive management lever, accountability and transparency, data refresh and technical upgrades, regulatory compliance gate. So basically, like if there is something substantial which has changed in the basin, need to be updated, and that's the purpose of periodic evaluation. And I think 20 years, is it by 20 years from the plan we submitted? that the basin has to be sustainable.
Right.
So in order to evaluate that and also making sure we are going towards the right direction and incorporating the DWR's Department of Water Resources comments or deficiencies which has been addressed or identified already.
And then I think, yeah, Todd can explain a little bit about what that periodic evaluation would look like.
Thanks, Eddie.
Sorry. I know. I was just looking at Todd.
So like just what Paul covered it well. 2027, we have to submit a periodic update. That's required. If there's significant changes to the sustainable management criteria, right, the MOs and the MTs, then there's the option to also submit a GSP amendment. I don't think we have a significant amount of new data to justify making changes to the SMCs at this point. I think at some point in the future, we will have to do that. So what we're recommending is we work on developing the periodic update, which I'll talk about here in the next slide, versus doing. Well, I mean, if you do an amendment, you have to do a periodic evaluation update anyway. So, but my recommendation is we do the periodic update for 2027. And then as we start to collect more data, which we're starting to do with some of these new wells that DWR has put in, at some point, we're going to have to address this interconnected surface water piece that maybe we can build off of what the regional board's done.
Did it for you.
Yeah, so then we need to kind of incorporate some of that information, but we've got to start probably being a bit more proactive on some of these, these challenges. So if you go to the next slide, this kind of walks through what gets included in a periodic evaluation. As Pawan mentioned that it's a little more work than the annual reports, but not like a completely, GSP revision amendment kind of thing. So what goes into that periodic evaluation, this is just an outline, is any new information collected. So we're kind of hearing some things that we've done already. The corrective actions, so recall back a year or two ago, GSP got approved, but there was 5 or 6 corrective actions that the DWR wants to see. This is the place where we actually include that information. Then there's the general groundwater level condition information, which is kind of really covered in the annual report, but they want to look at sort of what's happened, since the GSP has been submitted. Status of projects and management actions. So again, a little more thorough detail on what's been done since the initial GSP has been was submitted. Changes in basin settings, monitoring network, yes, that's been improved. Any changes in the GSA authority, that really hasn't happened much, as is the administration. So this is kind of what's required to go into one of these outlines for one of these periodic evaluations. So the recommendation is to kind of go with the periodic evaluation, not the GSP amendment for now. So, and then the next couple of slides, really just a high level, and I'll go through them really quickly. These are the corrective actions. So GSP got submitted. DWR came back and said, hey, yep, GSP's been approved, but there's some things you need to improve on. And so the first one really is addressing some of these data gaps in the upland areas. As you recall, when we were setting up the monitoring network, we really couldn't come up with a good well, primarily in this quadrant here, that southeast quadrant, that had a long-term history of water levels. We typically like to see like a 15 or 20-year period, and that's how we established the SMC. So they're asking us, hey, you need to sort of boost up your monitoring network. So what we've seen in other subbasins is, look, you know what, we don't have these wells that have these 20-year periods, but maybe we look at something that's got a shorter period. We don't make the decision to set SMCs on it, but we just start to incorporate it into the annual report. So I think this item, plus the wells that, we'll put in by DWR sort of closer to the lake, we probably checked that box. I think we've done a pretty good job of kind of filling some of those data gaps for this action. So I don't think there's a lot of work that needs to go into it, but there's no physical work that has to happen on the ground to kind of address this.
Southeast, sorry, go back. I just want to do
Yeah.
spatial recognition. Over the word southeast, that's Kelsey Creek, right?
Correct.
Are we in agreement? Okay, good.
This one I think was, what does this one have to do with? I think they were wanting to see more, these are the wells that were put in by DWR, right? When you put those.
Yes, I'm looking at the state well numbers.
Yeah, those,
For both of them.
yeah, so these are the wells. I think we had suggested the ones in the red X's, red crosses. I believe the ones in purple are the ones that the DWR put in. So we still have a bit more work. So maybe we can, convince Quinn to come up with some cash to help us put in some more wells, but, ideally, we want to get some wells in some of these areas, so.
So these red ones, like, how did we identify these ones?
Based on the data gaps, so we looked at our existing monitoring network and we said, we've got holes here, here, and here. We got to work to fill those holes.
And was it proposed in our previous plan?
Yes,
Okay.
The one that's dead center bottom,
right here.
that's considered the southeast quadrant?
I think it splits it. I think it's more on the southwest side, southeast side.
So I thought you said we needed more in the southeast, but I don't see a place for.
Because we had to work with landowners and then come up with like access agreements so that these are just areas. I mean, we could draw a big, 5-mile circle around that.
Okay, sorry, that's what I didn't understand.
So.
The reason we ended up going with the locations that are the purple X's there and not the red X's was because we still ended up encountering access issues, issues with parcel size, power lines overhead, like all sorts of things can make a site not very suitable for any kind of large scale drilling project. And so we went through a lot of potential site revisions before we picked those two sites. So I'm kind of envisioning that when the time does come, it's probably going to be a similar lift to try to find a suitable site for drilling in the southern portions of the basin.
Does anybody look for property for sale there? Just.
I don't think that was part of the effort. It was when you were working with Mitchell, right? I remember that you guys had there were so many property owners that were absolutely not, even Public Works
Yeah.
said no.
Yeah.
The county Public Works was like, nope, we don't want a well here, the
Public
state
Works
people on our
already
property.
said,
Don't put that.
We can't,
Okay, so never mind.
the TSS, the Technical Support Services Program will not buy property
Yeah.
to drill a
So the
well.
county has to buy something. There is along the southeast, Kelsey Creek, I mean, that's a county road, so there's some right of way and there's USGS gauge already there for surface water. So I don't know if that gives some leverage. I don't know if that was ever approached, because if someone already has approval for USGS to have a gauge there that's been there for 20 years, they might be susceptible to putting in but it's a steep canyon, so I don't know if that works for,
The drill rigs are basically the size of semi trucks.
yeah, so you don't have
Pretty
enough space
big.
there. So that's another reason why those X's are where they are.
Yeah.
That's a huge barrier.
It's a challenge everywhere. And I think what we've all learned through this is public right of ways, it's the way to do it because the landowners, some agree to it, then they sell the property and it's tied to the deed. It gets nasty. So.
Even if there's an incentive for the installation, like the short term, it's not sustainable.
And just a reminder that those wells and the technical support services that Quinn was talking about is a DWR program that offers us, so it did not cost the county money in order to put those in. So it's a good additional, like Bridget and I being here through the facilitation support services, DWR offers those different programs by which the county can avail themselves of things like this. So
Go ahead and then.
The other option, if you aren't able to get any wells, is whenever there is a new proposed plan development or cannabis grow or something, part of the mitigation or part of the approval of that project could include installation of a county or DWR well.
Right.
That's something that has to be.
Yeah.
But that might be a way. And I know we've done that for other projects, been like, okay, if you're building this thing, you have to have these things, you have to have these check dams, you have to have this basin, so there's no reason why you can't ask to have that included whenever there's some development around the areas
Okay. It's good to know.
to keep on the radar.
We have a guest or not a guest, but another Chief Spec members arrived. Welcome, Dave.
Sorry.
No worries. Yeah.
Hi.
So you go to the next one. So this is a little different. Well, there's a couple of things. It's sort of more focused on the current RMS network. If you remember, we had sort of selected when we had done our SMC evaluation, we had chosen the spring levels, and the concept there was like, if water levels drop too far in the fall and they kind of rebound back in the spring, then as long as we're managing to those spring levels are recovering, then we're okay. We've seen this in a couple other subbasins where DWR is like, no, we want to see fall readings, so that's going to be the lowest on record. If there's going to be any potential impacts to domestic wells, it's going to happen in the fall. I completely disagree with it, but we have to address it. So that's one of the comments that they want to see. So we can either kind of push back and say, no, we feel like we're sustainable and we're going to keep going with the spring and see how they respond. Or there'll have to be discussions at some point to revise the SMCs to switch it to a fall reading. If we're not seeing undesirable results, which I think is one of these next comments, I think it's the third one. why switch it? So this is something we'll have to work through, probably early 2026.
Especially since the history shows recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got decades of history that frankly, in my opinion, should have kept us out of this whole process anyway.
Right.
But given the recovery over the years and the fact that we're not subsiding, I mean,
Yeah.
I just think it's going to lead to reactionary, unnecessary reactions, I think, and that'll just cost.
There's a long history of dry wells and drought. There's a lot of wells that are 15, 20 feet deep that dry up in drought seasons.
Yeah.
And it's been that way forever. So to monitor that, and use that as a threshold of when we have a problem is kind of stupid.
Yeah. I mean, again, but this is.
I know you're on point.
We have to address it. And then this is the third or the B element in this is just maybe beefing up how we kind of describe the beneficial users, be it ag, municipal, domestic, and environmental, and then the groundwater dependent ecosystems. We all kind of got a free pass on the groundwater dependent ecosystems for the first, like the 2020 and the 2022 plans. But we're starting to see some guidance come out now from DWR, which is kind of tied to this sort of interconnected surface water, groundwater component, so there's a BMPs out, there's some methodologies that we can kind of look at. So we need to follow those BMPs as we move through that. And then this one is just provide a description of the relationship between established MTs for water levels and how they avoid undesirable results for each of the other sustainability indicators. So we just need to beef up that section a little bit. So I don't think there's any new work, hands on the, boots on the ground kind of work. It's just really just sort of tweaking some of the text in the original GSP.
Angela, did you have a question? Yeah, for A and B, it mentions beneficial users. In B, it says beneficial users and so it separates users of groundwater, including ag and municipal wells. Is beneficial uses or users like defined within our plan, the Lake County plan, or is it defined at the legislative level? Yeah. So it's okay.
Yeah.
So there's no specificity for what.
No, it's all beneficial.
Okay, so there could be beneficial uses that don't apply here, and there could be some that apply here that aren't included in that. Okay.
If you go to the next slide, this is just, again, clipped out of the GSP. We had sort of developed, here's the sustainability indicator. Then we have the minimum threshold, the measurable objective, and then what the undesirable result is. So this is just highlighting on the water levels. We're looking at as the minimum threshold is the lowest historical spring groundwater elevation. And then the objective is, this is the goal, is the average historical spring groundwater elevation. The average versus the lowest. So what DWR is telling us is, no, you need to switch this now for the MT to be the lowest historical groundwater elevation in the fall. So we're going to have to push back on that a little bit.
Is that a statewide thing that they're doing?
I mean, I was involved with a couple of plans where we pushed the spring and they came back and said, no, you need to switch it to the fall. I think in some subbasins it makes sense.
Yeah, but like most of California is ephemeral, so it's like, it's weird. Okay.
But this is what we have to deal with. So, I think you just go to the next slide. This is just an example. You guys have seen that. Can you go to the next slide? Yeah. So this is just, in this example, I think it's, this is a northeast well, so it's probably the one that's sort of highlighted there in red. And so you can kind of see the water levels through time. And right now, the MT is set here. What I think they're asking for now is we're actually going to have to pull this MT back up to the spring readings, and it's just going to raise that MT up, and so we need to think through that a little bit, kind of come up with a good response. I don't think it needs to happen because, again, look at the spread here. Look what happens when you do hit the spring reading. I mean, there's a fall reading. It's recovering. That's 25, 30 feet. For us to do something from an engineering perspective to raise it up 30 feet, I mean, it would be billions of dollars. So we just need to think through that a little bit. And, maybe we continue to monitor it, and if there's real justification, then maybe, but I just don't see it. So go to the next slide. This is a strange one, but we've seen it happen. So specific to water quality, right now we're just using total dissolved solids is sort of a proxy for the overall water quality of the system. And we've seen this come up in a couple of subbasins as well, is they just want some more justification for the rationale of why we use TDS. So maybe there was not enough text that explained that in the GSP. We've seen some subbasins where they're pushing us, they've been pushed to kind of bring more constituents in to the analysis. If there's issues with arsenic nitrate, those kind of things, but specific to, you know, the actions that this group can take, you know, I don't think we want to get into, you know, the water quality aspects of drinking water where we don't really have any control, so to speak, on the operations of it. But the concern is if mismanagement of the aquifer, as an example, water levels are decreasing and we're starting to see elevated TDS, nitrate, arsenic, there's a problem. But we're not seeing that. So again, we just need to kind of put some language in there to kind of address that. And perhaps it can be as simple as maybe every 5 years, we do maybe a more comprehensive water quality look. Instead of just looking at TDS every year, maybe we look at a handful of constituents over a 5-year period, just to kind of keep tabs on things. I think that would probably go down okay with DWR. Let's see, that was A. And then B, the GSA should provide detailed information supporting the definition of SMCs. For example, the GSP, in addition to qualitative descriptions, quantify the specific potential effects to beneficial users and uses from undesirable results related to water quality. Okay, I mean, we'll have to look at that. So
Is that like looking at the criteria that's in the, maybe like the, basin plan for surface water and seeing if there's anything?
you can, but there's other programs that kind of oversee that. So I think what they want is like, hey, just manage the aquifer in a way that's not going to have negative impacts on some of the domestics specific to water quality. If there's mismanagement happening and it's causing water quality issues, then there needs to be something done about it.
But you're saying there might not be enough data to do that yet as far as water quality? Because we've only been taking TDS, correct?
Correct. I think
I thought there was other constituents.
we did. I think DWR footed the bill for this a couple of years ago, where we did a round of water quality where we brought in. It was a longer list of constituents. I think you guys footed the bill for
I
that.
believe so.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a few years ago.
So I mean, we kind of done that already, but I mean, I think we just need to pull it in, you know, a bit more. So that's corrective action 3. And if you just go to the next slide, this is just kind of shows you again the same table. Now we're looking at degraded water quality. MT is a TDS of 750. The MO ideal is about 500, and then we have to obviously define what the undesirable result is. So that's just kind of how it's defined now in the GSP. You go to the next slide. Too much text on this thing. This is a tricky one. So this is tied to stream flow depletions. So, you know, with Adobe Creek, Kelsey Creek, there's a time that's going to come where there's going to be requirements put out on in-stream flows. And the concept's going to be, okay, you need to make sure there's this much water in the creeks. And if there's pumping that's occurring, you know, in and around the creek that's depleting the creek, there's going to be challenges, or there's going to be issues we have to deal with, because it's not just the creek surface water, it's the GDEs tied to the creek. So what we've seen in other subbasins is, you know, we've got this model that needs to be developed, needs to be updated. But, you know, what do we need to do to make sure that, you know, we're maintaining in-stream flows? And, you know, there's some guidance, like I mentioned, that's sort of tied to the groundwater dependent ecosystem comment that was previously put up, where you look at, okay, you've got stream gauges, you've got water levels, looking at that connection between surface water and groundwater. I think a lot of the challenges that we've seen in other subbasins is, you know, a lot of the wells that are in these, you know, close proximities to streams, rivers even, you know, those wells have been in for decades, you know, centuries, some century maybe. But so the concept is, you know, you can't really control what happened prior to 2015, right? So a lot of those wells are going to have to be grandfathered in because you had no control over them. But maybe there's an ordinance put in place where any new wells need to be 100 feet back from the river. I mean, those are the kind of things that we need to kind of keep tabs of to avoid, you know, any future additional issues with the sort of surface water, groundwater hydraulic connection. So,
Eddie, with seasonal creeks, which these are.
Yeah.
How do they, are those threshold's gonna change with time? I mean, at some point, the creeks go dry whether we're pumping or not.
Well, we set the limit, so we'll look at the historical sort of aspect of it and say, okay, here's what we want to do in the spring or the fall, these creeks will go dry, so that's just the way that it's happened, but in the spring or the fall, we need to make sure that when water levels are at a certain level, they're matching what's happened historically.
And that would be independent, timing wise, it would be independent of hitch migration. It it has nothing to do with the particular biological
I mean,
species.
we
right?
need to tie it back to that because the hits are a beneficial use.
Yeah.
So, and again, most of the GSPs got sort of a free pass on this in the 2020 and the 2022, primarily, not keep throwing UW on the bus here, but, because there were some best management practices that were supposed to come out to kind of guide us on how to do this. Didn't come out, and we're sort of, I mean, I think there's some draft guidelines out now, but the official BMP I haven't seen yet. So we're waiting for that to come out, and then we'll kind of evaluate what they're saying, and we'll kind of come up with, whatever's needed.
And I think this is where like probably that water board study come into picture. Can that help us address this?
I think it will, plus the work that Sarah's doing. I mean, there needs to be closer coordination with her on some of that work.
So this also goes to the items that are in your implementation table. So you guys got a Wildlife Conservation Board grant to do a feasibility update for a Highland Springs reservoir. So how it can be enlarged, like made bigger and change the dam operation.
Okay.
So specifically for in-stream flows
Okay.
to meet the groundwater requirements and hitch habitat flows.
So who's doing that?
That's you guys have the grant.
Okay.
And we did a RFP to get the consultant to help us. It's gonna be Flow West because they're familiar. They work with Big Valley. They work in the area. And there was a feasibility set in 2002, but that was based on data up until like 1990.
Right.
So this was to update the feasibility study and to do the design plans to figure out how to make the reservoir larger, to collect more water short term, and to change the dam operation, increase the spillway. It was to do all the design work. And do all the studies downstream and use all the data that exists so you can figure out the best schema, whatever, to keep the in-stream flows. We're kind of like looking ahead. We're like, what's gonna be required of us in 10 years? Well, we're the only like dam on a creek that's managed by the county and managed, it's the only one. And it's a prime hitch habitat. So we have to do something, and we have this huge reservoir. And so we have to manage it better, and it hasn't been updated or changed since it was built in 68. So
the money's there, we just got.
the money's there, you guys have it, you have a contractor that's been approved.
So is this asking for like a plan thing or like action we're gonna take or have we taken it?
I think what they want to see is progress.
Which that is, and I want to make sure you guys aren't starting from scratch.
Right.
You also got money from Mike Thompson to do a feasibility study for Adobe Creek Reservoir.
Okay.
Does that reservoir even need to be there?
Yeah.
How is the creek, we started doing monitoring above stream for hitch habitat and to figure out how much water is actually going in the reservoir. Maybe it needs to be dredged out and made a bigger reservoir.
Right.
So then we did some pre-release studies of Adobe Reservoir in, was it 2023? And it was pulses, and basically it made more pools and the hitch got stuck. So right now doing releases to try to improve the in-stream flows does not work.
Okay.
Like it does not work. None of the water gets to Clear Lake. None of it, it kind of creates in these pools, more hitch gets stuck. So we really need to have more of a comprehensive feasibility study. So you currently have about, I think that item, I think it's like 700,000 to $1 million in that grant for a consultant. And that doesn't include staff time at the water resources. That includes just consultant equipment to study the crap out of Adobe Creek and Highland Springs.
Right.
Sorry. Don't.
Yeah.
And then also to figure out the role of Adobe Creek Reservoir.
Yeah.
And because there's water rights within that, there's a whole section in that grant too, to help work with the water rights division and the property owners. There needs to be an easement purchase? Do you need to purchase property? Do you need to offset water rights because it changes?
I think all these projects, isn't there is a list we have listed the project where
It's not updated.
it's not updated?
It's
Okay.
the list that's in the annual report.
Yeah.
Is what came out of the GSP. So
Okay.
we need to obviously dust it off.
Yeah, and you guys did a lot of work and you have stuff lined up to kind of meet both the requirements in this and to hitch requirements because we saw it was coming down the line from the water board. And so that's all there, you gotta implement it and use it, but that'll show definite progress towards this.
Okay, that's perfect. And then I think the next slide, this just kind of walks you through, this is a BMP that's out. from DWR and trying to sort of understand that interconnected surface water depletion caused by groundwater pumping. So there's some guidelines out there. We need to kind of follow those. Those didn't come out to obviously the GSP that had been approved. So they're there. We just need to kind of look at them. Go to the next slide. These are just the papers that came out, for the interconnected surface water. So my understanding is that we're still kind of waiting for the guidance to come out on that. But there's some example papers how to go about doing it that came out, I think, late last year. So, and this is just a concept. I thought maybe Sarah would be here, but others might be interested in. So the idea here is what you do is you have a model, you run the model as is, and you look at the stream gauges within, a specific creek or river, and then you turn off pumping to sort of see what the influence is. So in this example, this is what the stream gain is within the stream in this example with pumping, and then you shut off all pumping around there, and this is what happens. So that difference, what DWR is saying is that difference is related to groundwater extraction having an influence on your stream. So that's something we need to look at. But I mean, historically, if this is already been happening, then we're not going back to fix things that happened prior to 2015. They just want to sort of see we're starting to think through how we'd go about evaluating that.
How does surface water diversions play into that?
This is actually surface water. Oh, I mean, how would it play into it?
You look at
Yeah, you'd have to.
everything goes back to groundwater pumping, but at the same time, you have a bunch of surface water diversions happening that haven't been reported, so.
Yeah, exactly. It's not as easy as this. Yeah. Then go to the next slide. I think this is the next piece. So really what you're looking at here is, here's pumping in that general area. And then you sort of looking at what the potential depletion is. This is stream depletion because of pumping. So again, it's not as easy as this, but this is sort of some guidance that DWR has kind of put out. And this is, I'd say, mostly focused to sort of along the Sacramento River, San Joaquin River, those kind of things.
Yeah, this is from sites not here.
Yeah, exactly. This is just a concept.
Example, okay.
Yeah, this is just a concept. But again, we should be collecting. We probably have a lot of this information. We just need to start kind of synthesizing it and looking at it and keeping tabs on, how things are looking as we move through.
Can you go back one slide, please?
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. So this one, like if they were to do this specifically for like Adobe Creek, you could figure out what that gap is, and then that would go into the study for Highland Springs Recreation Reservoir to figure out how much more water do you need throughout the year to support that so you can maintain, your 100-year pumping
Right.
that is required, and then also make sure there's not a decrease in the stream flow. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So we go to the next slide, the next one. And again, similar comments, similar table, but for the ISW SMC, right now, because we don't have a lot of that data sort of tied to sort of stream flow depletion, we're tying everything back to monitoring well data. So again, this was very common. This was done in 2020 and 2022 plans. But right now, at some point, as you can see, they want to see these stream gauges sort of incorporated more into the data sets. Doesn't that need to happen next year? But we got to show progress that we'll work towards making progress on refining that data set or that monitoring network.
So basically, that means installing measuring devices.
Correct.
Yeah.
Or doing it, or start doing it. What we've been doing in some sub-basins is we just go out periodically and gauge it. There's some fancy little boats now that you can kind of, float around, and it's got Doppler and acoustics that you can kind of get a sense of what the gauges are. So that's what's been happening in some areas where we don't have this monitoring network set up.
But a lot of that has already been set up, like Angela said, through the work that we've been doing on nuclear catch emergency.
I think the
I
thing
think
is
it's just a matter of utilizing
the coordination. That's the key.
USGS actually did that. They went out with the little floaties over the last 2 years and put them in the creek, and they have that, especially during the hitch run times.
Yeah.
And they just submitted a proposal to have 3 more years to do that, and it all includes sites in there.
So I mean, it's there. It's the coordination.
Yeah.
It's the opinion that there's got to be better coordination.
So would this be like on all streams or just the 2 principal?
I think it would just need to be the 2 major ones initially, and then I mean that's the big drivers.
Is that Kelsey and Adobe?
Yeah. That's what I'd recommend initially, and then so that as you kind of work the workflow through, then maybe you can expand it. But those are the 2 that I think are going to trigger the GE ISW piece. So
And you guys have some comments?
yeah.
Oh, I just wondered who does the coordination.
Good question.
I think that's something that obviously needs to be improved because I don't think there is any.
So that would be water resources and DWR and the.
DWR is not gonna be, I mean, I think they'll support it locally, but I mean, I think it needs to be,
It's the Watershed Protection District as the GSA. Well, it's, so the Board of Supervisors are the GSA board, and so therefore, and they represent the Watershed Protection District too. So that's kind of.
So what
I think.
The outside of
To get in the room, somebody take notes.
So we have grants and we have USGS doing studies and our Water Resources Department, and those need to be coordinated together.
And it could be, it's simple, but we have a coordination call once a month to kind of work through, okay, who's doing what, where, and then how do we, selfishly bring this into the GSP world to make sure everybody's talking to each other.
Sorry, but would that be one?
I think so.
Yeah,
Put-
so,
Point the finger at the top.
no, so it would be like a groundwater sustainable agency, like the plan, which is the board of supervisors, also the board of director for the sustainable agency. No, so, because that responsibility has been given to us with the department, but we have not been given the staff to do that. So this is like an additional thing we have taken over,
I
the
get
same
that.
person thing.
Saying that
Yeah,
that's what it-
so
So like,
so it comes to like somebody dedicating their time. And right now it's us.
so Marina used to coordinate all the groundwater stuff, and after that it was Will. So there's always been a staff available. There has been grant funds dedicated directly to groundwater. Now there's not a direct groundwater grant to support that time, but there is many other grants and then other, just general watershed protection district funds that could support some, but.
Thanks, you guys. I'm just listening
Yeah, it's
from the
good.
outside.
And Val, to that question too, the importance of an advisory committee in any of these processes, as in any of the basins, is exactly this, right? Like bringing up the different things. Oh, did you know? And, we've worked on, because I know several of you have sat on the Hitch, the emergency listing Hitch project and all of the things of that, the tribe, like bringing it all together here. That's kind of the point of an advisory committee and has always been a strong suit of this advisory committee too.
But this, I hate to have the meeting, you come next time and have the same thing.
Sure.
Right, so.
Correct. And I think you'll see the action that's going to be taken out of this with further slides, Val, because I know that's been.
Oh, great. Okay.
Good question. And I think the last slide on this topic, this is just a general topic or general sort of comment, like, hey, whatever you say you're doing in the GSP, make sure it kind of aligns with the GSP regulations. It does, but maybe there's some ways we need to kind of beef up some of the sections. So, I mean, we got a passing grade, so DWR is happy with us. You can kind of see the sub-basin is somewhat sustainable now, on the storage side. So I think we're doing okay. We just need to improve things. And they just, they don't want to wait till 2042 to see some of these improvements. If there's anything we can even do, it's just a comment to include. So this one's not that big of a deal to address. So I think that's it on the sort of periodic evaluation.
So there's 5 corrective actions.
Yeah.
There's no alternative pathway to satisfy the requirement for periodic evaluation if the basin is sustainable for after every annual report period. It's been like, I know for other programs at the state, we've had alternative compliance pathways, or we did our own work plan for the team DL because the one the state wanted us to do did not make sense. It did not work for us. We did an alternative pathway. So I'm just wondering, it's a lot of work. It's all useful. And I see meeting the corrective actions you could still do as part of that, but I'm just curious if
There is such a thing as an alternative plan instead of a GSP. Before I started with the department, I believe Big Valley submitted one.
Yeah, and that did not work. But I'm saying instead of the plan, like the plans, you can still do updates to the plan, but I'm just wondering.
Streamlined or a light version.
Yeah, because the quotes for how much a periodic evaluation would be, sorry, I didn't know Ghost doing a lot of the work. But I'm just wondering if that is an option that should start be thinking now. Can that be through a request? Be like, hey, we've demonstrated we've been sustainable, but we are doing these things regardless. Can we get a waiver on the period evaluation due to staff shortages, drought, blah, blah, blah. We have a hitch emergency. So we're actually doing some of these things because we have a hitch emergency. The governor's drought emergency was removed for every county except for us for Clear Lake Hitch. So we still have requirements.
You can ask the Sustainable Groundwater Management Office or the folks in Sacramento. I can't tell you for sure what their answer will be. I will predict it will probably be they will want you to continue to submit annual reports to that you are indeed.
Right, but maybe bypass the stringent periodic evaluation. You don't know.
I
You can't
don't
say.
know for sure.
We can have a call.
It's probably one of the
Logic would say they should
conversation.
have that mentality, if you were able to show you have a sustainable.
Yeah.
We can have
I'm just thinking-
a call with them, but I've done this in other subbasins. And you're not gonna get a yes or no from them.
Yeah,
It's not gonna happen.
until you actually submit an official letter. You have to go to the board and ask them, can we submit? Yeah, it's
I
up to
think we
you.
have to still update the deficiencies which has been identified, and updating the plan is also like that 5-year thing. At some point,
You
you
would
have
update
to.
it with the corrective actions and you would mention all the reports.
That's what basically that 5-year thing is.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think what Paul's saying is in order to demonstrate the action towards these 5 things, the simplest solution and the one as per the regulations would be the periodic evaluation. But something that we've been talking about offline is, and we demonstrated it here today, is again, whether we'd go that periodic evaluation route or we do a full plan amendment. And given, to your point, the cost of the plan amendment, it seems like it makes sense to go for the periodic evaluation. Juan, I'll pass it over to you to kind of talk about going that periodic evaluation route and asking the group whether that's something that they would agree with as opposed to that plan update, which again is more expensive.
Yeah, I think we generically in the May meeting talked about that and everybody was kind of like head shake yes, but I think affirming that here and saying that that would be the preferred path.
Yeah, so,
for everyone.
yeah, so the periodic evaluation has like 2 routes we can take. One is like updating the plan we have, which is updating with the deficiencies. And the second option we have is to do the amendments. So either way, like whichever route we take, we do have to address these deficiencies which has already been identified. And updating the plan is the lighter version we are talking about.
Or the evaluations,
What's better in the long run, I guess. is what
Yeah,
I'm
that's-
saying.
yeah.
Like, because
The
there's-
plan amendment might capture more
Yeah,
of like,
yeah.
I mean, it's like we continue and then plan for the
Yeah.
next 5 years, that money that we're going to spend now is going to be spent.
and that coordination effort can be included in that plan amendment. Update.
So if you do a plan update, you also have to do the evaluation. If you do the evaluation, it doesn't require the plan update with it. And like Eddie was sharing, that update is for if there's significant changes to the SMCs, if there's other things that require kind of a bigger adjustment to the plan. And given the incredible progress that has been made on many of these corrective actions and just kind of DWR wanting to see more of that work, it seems based on, and this is just what I'm hearing and I defer to the group, but it seems like it, and to Juan's thought on this as well, that the evaluation, the periodic update would be the kind of easier way and the most effective, streamlined way. I'd just love to hear.
There's some other pieces
To accomplish what though? Is my question.
to comply with it.
Right, but to what are,
Reach deficiencies as stated by DWR, but also to include the data that is now known that wasn't known in the beginning.
Which would include a lot of the water board surface groundwater stuff too.
yeah, I think that was more of a rhetorical question in that like if our goal is actually to be sustainable as a basin, I don't know that going the easy route and doing the periodic update accomplishes that goal. If we've made
And then, in all the plans you've worked on, have you seen a more stable basin? No. So I think that answers that question. I mean, what are we trying to achieve?
I think also, a lot of the 2020, so the critically overdrafted subbasins, did the periodic update and the plan amendment for obvious reasons because they're critically overdrafted.
But they're a problem.
Exactly. So, I mean, my thought is let's submit the periodic update. If DWR has additional things they want to see and force an amendment, then force the amendment. But I think it's too premature. Even though there's been a lot of project related work, it's the monitoring network that we need to, improve on and the coordination to make sure that we're capturing all this good work that's you mentioned. I think it's too premature to do an amendment.
Yeah, and timing wise, it's January 2027. So while that sounds a really long way away,
It's like a
it's
year.
not at all. Yeah.
But I think for amendment also, we do need to have some project on ground, I believe, which we don't, like we have just the plans.
But we can tie in a lot of stuff that Angela's talking
It's a lot
about.
of.
But that's still the plans, like nothing has been on the ground. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not even fixed the structure for the calcific retention structure yet. So I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking amendment will require more solid.
It does. It also
Yeah.
has a process that is a public process that would have to go through with the readoption, and it has an entire like dispute, like there's a whole component to it from, the public, because you're wholesale changing all of those things.
It's like when the plan was being built, that was a lot of,
Correct.
yeah, and
It
going
was
and doing
20
updates to the board, doing public comment. revision.
27
Yeah, that's the other
meetings,
things
that's
that,
subcommittee meetings
That's why it's
leading up to that.
Yeah, those were rushed. That was all rushed.
Yeah, it was a 9-month process.
and there was $1 million grant that funded all of that.
1.5,
which-
okay,
okay.
5
Yeah, which don't,
from DWR.
it doesn't exist now, so. That isn't around.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you're looking for a recommendation from this group to recommend?
It's Pawan's call, really, as the GSA, like, just, how, but I think that affirming that here, that's the better course of action than the full amendment. But Rebecca, I want to make sure that we've heard you out of
Oh, no.
some of the things that
We're good.
you're thinking, if there's anything. And I think it's a good point to, make sure that we capture what Rebecca's saying, because maybe what the goal is in that next 5-year, right? Every 5 years in a 40-year timeline, that consideration gets captured, right? As we do this update to it, are we looking at what the next logical big step is to things? And maybe it's waiting to hear out DWR of their return of the next level of, I don't like to call them deficiencies, but things to watch out for, things to enhance or look out for. Maybe those will help guide, does that next 5-year and be a little farther out from it, so you can have a little bit more planning timeline for it too. So I think, capturing what Rebecca's saying and having that in the back of your head as you do go forward to doing the update is really prudent as well.
and hopefully by then there'll be the plans for both reservoirs, the Scotts Creek watershed study should be done, the AM study should be done. There should be a lot of stuff that can be compiled in to actually give a full picture.
So we're thinking that the studies will be done. Will there be any concrete action done in the next 5 years? Like he was just saying, none of the projects have been started. So do you think in 5 years, maybe they'll get rid of the Kelsey Creek issue? Or?
Yeah, that would be resolved for sure. The detention structure
Mhm.
and there's the recommendation about the dams, like the Adobe.
I mean, that project could be 10, 15 years. I mean, you're adding onto a dam. So that's a lot.
The construction won't
But
be-
something so that, because I sort of hate to see us building on something that might not be done right now.
The Island Springs thing is just a modification of the spillway, isn't it?
Yeah, and then also, I think there's some land augmentation, like a road and part of the park and stuff that has to be augmented to allow for more storage.
Inside the park, but the dam structure itself, I think, is.
Yeah, I'm not an engineer, I can't, and I think the dam is a little broken, so some of that is all kind of,
Well, the spillway, yeah.
and I don't know.
They're not talking about raising the dam, they're talking about raising the spillway to, am I correct on that?
Yeah, I mean,
From the
even if
2002 one, yeah.
they will raise the spillway, it has to be like bumped up, even though because the dam is much higher, but it might not hold the hydraulic pressure from there. So even if the dam from outside, it might look the same, but it has to be widened a little bit more because the spillway is way down compared to the dam itself.
There's like 30 years of data that has, or time period that's happened since the last feasibility
So I'm
study.
sure they get easier.
Yeah, and the amount of rain that we get, the water storage, the increase, it's different, so.
I think back in 2002, the whole project was gonna cost $800,000 or something like that.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Not
Back to the amount.
studied more than that.
Yeah, and they didn't have any information on clearly on Hitch environmental flow needs too. They had some estimates, but they didn't have the data that's available now, so.
So if I understand what we're going to be voting on right now, would be to go ahead with the periodic evaluation and not with an amendment and reevaluate whether we need amendment in 5 years.
I think that sums it up.
No.
Yeah, because like as per the requirement of the GSP, we have to make that 5-year update, which is 2027.
Right.
So that's why we need to make that decision.
Okay, well, I'm willing to move for that as long as we seriously evaluate between now and 2032 whether we need to do amendment.
And if we can do a motion to do it, and then a second, and then it's just an affirmation of it. This isn't a voting body per se, that it's guidance that you're providing. So I know that we have kind of like voted, was everybody in unison that yes, that's how we're gonna move forward. And I would suggest that that's how we do it today. So Val's made the motion.
Sorry, the board of directors doesn't have to vote on it.
The board of directors is the final decision-making body of it. What this advisory committee does is elevate the guidance to them. And so.
Right, so this decision has to go to the BOD to decide to go forward on a periodic evaluation
No.
based on our recommendation, or it's just because it's a requirement.
Just elevate, just have guidance to them and they would just be like, yeah, okay, great. You know, I don't think it's like a hard vote or anything like that, but we're gonna talk about that in a little bit about going in front of the board of supervisors. So this is just saying that all of you feel like that's the good path forward is to do an updated process versus an amendment process at this point.
So if it goes to the board, we just want to really make sure that we indicate that we'd like to see that.
Yeah.
B 32, current investigation of a plan update's really needed, like.
I'll second the motion.
Sorry for interrupting.
Okay.
That's what I do.
By the way, we do have quorum now, is that correct?
Yes.
And we did when we started the meeting.
We did when we started the meeting for this meeting. What we were waiting for is for enough people to be here to do the minutes.
So we have that
Did we
now?
have
We do have that.
I believe that, yeah.
Okay, sorry, you're supposed to say all this.
I don't know.
Yeah. All those in favor?
Such a word president over here.
Okay.
So you have to be a boss.
Rebecca is our ultimate Robert's Rule of Orders. She's amazing. She's amazing. So,
Yeah, so before we move on.
People that run meetings love that, though.
That sounds great. So yeah, we're closing out agenda item number 4. And we're gonna circle back to our agenda item about the previous prior meeting minutes for May. But give you a copy of those.
Review, yeah.
Which we didn't have quorum for approving them at the beginning of the meeting because not enough people who were present at that meeting were present at the beginning, but now we do have that quorum. And so there were some revisions requested, which was, updating Angela's role, updating Val's role, and ensuring that Pat was marked as present. Any other requested changes? No? Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended?
Okay, I'll do.
Eilish, a second? Great. All in favor? Anyone opposed? Great.
you can use them tonight as fine, because I wasn't here.
And our next agenda item is going to be on long-term funding planning, so kind of dovetails well, and I'll pass it to Ron.
Okay, so the next item we have here is the Big Valley Groundwater Sustainability Agency long-term funding planning. So, like as I mentioned earlier, that saying, so there is no dedicated budget item for this GSA. There is currently no funding for the 2024 annual report as well as the 2027 periodic evaluation we just talked about. So the 2027 periodic evaluation is anticipated to cost around 125 to 185,000. That's every 5 years. And this periodic evaluation will address the 5 corrective actions which we just listened to earlier. And then the annual report is anticipated to cost 30 to 40,000 every year. That too after we have our staff work on the annual report. Because if our staff is not working, I think the annual report costs more, which was the case this year because we had our staff left and then it was a long time since we were able to hire the replacement for that position. But yeah, if we have the staff here, it will cost about 30 to 40,000 to do the modeling updates and other things, and the report can be prepared by our staff.
On the years of the periodic, do you have both costs that year?
Yeah, so I will, so this is like after we have our staff here, like providing back and forth communication, transferring data, whatever is requested, updates and everything, then it will cost 125 to 185 for the update.
Pawan, even in years where we have to do periodic evaluation, we're also required to do an annual report.
Yeah, when we put.
Oh,
in
It's not
2020
included?
No.
Dumb.
In January of 2022, you know, put in your plan, April 1st, you still had to put in the annual report. And that's that, yes. So
Doesn't-
the answer is
Periodic evaluation doesn't include that year's data. I guess it's cumulative, right, over the.
Yeah, and it's a repetitive, right? Like it's an analysis year over year over year. So, yeah. 2 months, 3
We
months.
have heard DWR that they're looking to streamline the annual report process. So maybe, in my lifetime, we might see where it's more of a, check the box, especially maybe sub-basins that don't need to be doing it every year. So that, the idea is hopefully that price can come down, I don't.
Yeah,
know if
and that's the comment I provided to DWR saying it should be like more streamlined, because if we are doing the same thing over and again and we have a staff should be able to do it, but it depends. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's
Certain things which staff can't do.
There's precedent for that too. So the discharge permitting through the water board does 1 year that's a heavy, here's a bunch of stuff you have to do and respond on. And then the following years, that should be on a 5-year cycle, but usually end up being 10 because the permits are always late, is a reduced question year to make sure you're on track. And then they have another 1 or 2 years where it's heavy lifting. So there's a precedence for that. So, and then it's all part of the annual report. It's just a heftier annual report that includes stuff over the timelines.
And as more guidance comes out from DWR and as we all learn more about all of this from everyone navigating this, it will change. The processes will change. But right now, this is the legislative mandate that things get updated every 5 years, that there's an annual report that can be tracked. And in large respect, that annual report becomes what the public can, understand, because as we all know, that GSP is very hefty. So for the near term, at least, this is kind of what you're looking
I'm sure DWR staff doesn't want to review both an annual report and periodic evaluations.
Yeah, so as it exists right now, so we are looking at two things, which is the annual report and the periodic evaluation. And the periodic evaluation, if we go just the updating route, probably takes 125 to 185, and the annual report about 30 to 40,000. So looking at the funding and fee options for the GSA administration. So there are like couple of options we have here, which is like go through like a Prop 218 route and the potential cost structure to ensure the long-term fiscal sustainability of groundwater management efforts in the Big Valley Basin. So I think these things has been discussed in the previous GSPAC meetings, that we need to come up with at least that administration cost of the side of the administration of this sustainable plan. So Lake County Board of Supervisors serves as the board of director for the Big Valley GSA, and they has the ultimate decision-making authority on the GSA actions as far as the funding and fee option goes. Water Resources Department aims to present the information to the board this fall, because as you can see, like this 2027 is coming pretty quick. And if we want consultant to work on these updates, we have to give them a go ahead at least 9 months to a year in advance. And if it is 2027, so you can see like 2026, we need to give them a go ahead and we need to have some funding. So we are planning to provide an update to the Board of Supervisors and emphasize the need for the long-term funding sources, options to achieve that funding, and request a recommendation to initiate a process to hire a contractor for the Prop 218 process.
Can you explain the Prop 218 process?
Yes, please.
Tax your groundwater.
Is that,
They're gonna tax your groundwater.
how's it work?
So you can do it 2 ways. You can do a ballot, like you can just be added onto the ballot, or you can do a mail-in kind of ballot. Sends out to the area.
So it's similar to like the school board bond.
But if you think dollar amount, how is that gonna get figured out, right? Like how that all works?
That's-
And we can talk about that.
Does that,
What kind of level does that need to be passed at?
There's different ways. So the mail-in ballot, like vector control did, there's certain ways you can do it with only the 50.1%. And then there's other way you can actually go on the ballot, but you need the 66%. So like the district put out water quality ballots for water quality improvements and groundwater improvements. I think they had 3 or 4 over the last 15, 20 years. And none of them met the 66%. They were on the regular ballot, the regular November kind of vote for Save the Lake. And then there was Measure L and some other things. The Water Resources Department just did, or the district just did, you guys just did an assessment questionnaire. I was going to ask you about the results of that.
Stormwater.
Well, it was for a district assessment fee, and under the district requirements, groundwater is included under that. So it's a stormwater, but it's for district. So it alleviates some of the funds, like district revenue, and then there'd be more for groundwater. So I kind of overheard your question, sorry.
Yeah. No, I think your question was about saying 218, like how it get passed or something. So I think it's for 218 process, I think it's the 50% of the voter have to oppose it. I think is it
Yeah.
50.1% has to oppose the motion or like the fees which would be recommended. If we don't get that protest more than 50%, which is 51% or so, then it get passed, like whatever.
Is 50% of the people responding or 50% of the people that?
I think you submit
Protest.
protest.
Have to vote no.
50%, I
Yeah.
send it out, 50% of those ballots you send out have to come back and protest, which never happens.
So it's an automatic deal, basically.
But, and I'll cover this in a sec. We're starting to see a bit of a shift, not to complicate things or take away from yours.
Yeah.
We're starting to see folks shift from a Prop 218, which requires that, ballot process, to a Prop 26, which does not, and they're passing it as a regulatory fee. So there's a lot of outreach that has to be done, there has to be an engineering report done, but there's no vote on it. And that's what we're starting to see as a trend now, as opposed to the 218 where you have to kind of go through the ballot process.
So one top line difference between those two is on the 26th process, it has to be for a very definitive set of things that you've been, you have this authority as a groundwater authority to be able to enact those. It's a very set thing, whereas the 218 leaves you a little bit more open-ended as far as what kind of things can be covered. You're still beholden to whatever you project out needs to get covered, those funds have to be used for that, but it's a little broader than the 26, which is the authority granted to the GSAs. So there's a little difference there. And, I know that you all are going to talk a little bit more about this.
And the constituency that would vote,
GSA, just the GSA.
so it's just the
Big
Big Valley.
Big
and
Valley, correct.
that's property owners or well owners or
Property owners.
property.
Maybe parcel owners, but Dave, what you might be a little confused is when we talked about this in either December of 2021 or January of 2022, we had that subcommittee meeting specific to this. We talked about Marina, there was some conjecture that it would be a county-wide thing to protect all groundwater and then would be able to, initiate the stuff as almost like a case study in the Big Valley, but then because there's other areas of the county that needed it, and that's certainly open to, but that's why that might be a little confusing.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the other option we have is like to go after the other funding sources, which is like Prop 4 funding. We know there are some funds, but I think there is no clear direction yet. But maybe available to support certain GSA activities. Specific details on allowable activities not yet available, and there is also not a timeline yet. So.
There you go.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much, Pilot.
Not a literal fire, right?
Yeah.
A repair.
A pair of fire.
No.
Is there a little?
So these are the current projects we have, or do we want to talk the funding thing?
Maybe we'll get through kind of all the things that the district's doing and then we can pass it over to Eddie, unless you want to interrupt.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. So these are the current projects, I think, which has been brought up earlier in some of them in the last meeting as well. So we have the Big Valley Fish Habitat Improvement and Groundwater Recharge Project. In that, the objective one is to fix the Kelsey Creek detention structure. And this is part of the Mike Thompson's 500,000 he provided to us. So out of that, I think 200,000 would be used to fix that Kelsey Creek detention structure. And Todd, which you met in last meeting, Todd about our water resources program coordinator, he was not able to join us today, but he had some family emergency, but he did like some research on that, and he's following up like where those fundings were, because this has been allocated for some time to us, but we were not able to follow up. So it seems like he has figured it out where it was sitting, and maybe in few weeks, the paperwork and everything should be lined up and we should be ready to use.
It's through NRCS still, right?
Yeah, it's through NRCS and so he and just last week he actually turned in his paperwork for the funding. So paperwork, the budget breakdown and everything. So this should be good to go in a very short time.
Well, I have a question about that project. So Todd emailed me a few months ago, I believe, asking, I at one point, I still had the equipment, had plans to potentially put a stage monitor, right. It would be connected to the telemetry unit for the Kelsey Creek monitoring well. It would be in channel, as kind of part of a pilot ISW monitoring program. And Todd mentioned that you guys maybe had funding to put something in, and I told him that either I could put my equipment in, which would be a very simple stage monitor. It just tells us, how deep the Kelsey Creek is right there, or if he had funding to put in a more complex, like full stream gauge suite, that he might want to do that. And I don't think I ever heard back on what the plan was on that.
Yeah, I think we're gonna put like our equipment there because we do want to keep it consistent. We already have it in a couple of locations.
Absolutely.
And I think we do have funding for that.
Cool. Right.
I'm not sure like where exactly that is right now.
Okay.
But I did see like we did some quotes or something. I don't
Okay.
know whether it moved past that yet.
Right on. Sounds good.
And Todd has been really digging into this.
Yeah.
Sincerely, he's very motivated about it. And, Angela gave him a lot of good guideposts to look up.
Oh,
and to
good.
do all that. Yeah. So he has been digging into it. And he was heartsick that he could not be here today, but he had a legitimate family emergency that he had to tend to.
And then let them know too that even if this grant or another one or other funding source helps to install the gauge and start it, that if CalCIP keeps going, they can help maintain a gauge, because that's what they approved the grant for the Coal Creek diversion structure under CalCIP, and that was to maintain a gauge system through ESGS that's already there. So there's some sustainability options there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the second objective in that study is about the Adobe Reservoir surface and groundwater storage and flow enhancement feasibility study. So that is the remaining 300,000 from that 500,000 which Mike Thompson's provided would be used for this. And the purpose of that objective or the objective is to determine the variability, determine the viability of modifying the Adobe Creek Reservoir or dam. So whether it's feasible to modify or like how much it can be done, to what extent, that's what this study will find out. And then we also plan to install a telemetry on the Adobe Reservoir as well. And then there would be like the outreach to the surrounding community as part of this project, and there would be a revamped Sigma webpage, which would be developed. And then I think as we also have another study which is funded by like another agency, which is the Adobe Creek Conjunctive Use Assessment. And the objective for that study is to assess and update the conjunctive use project plan, which was mentioned earlier, which was the older one. That would modify the Highland infrastructure and operation to provide additional water storage for flow augmentation downstream when needed for hedge spawning, hatch, or outmigration. If you see the Adobe Creek and Highland Creek, they both join downstream about couple of miles down. And so water can be released from either of the dams. So we are basically doing the feasibility study, both the dams and also the dam operation at the Highland Spring.
The Adobe Creek conjunctive use, the name was officially changed to Highland
To
Creek.
the Highland Creek, yes.
Just to avoid confusion, because it's technically not on Highland Creek, it's not on Adobe Creek, and it was really confusing. Both for the state, who didn't understand what we're talking about, and then the public didn't understand what we're talking about. So make sure you keep that consistent, please.
So another study we have is about the AEM study. So So this AEM stand for Airborne Electromagnetic Surveys. So these are about understanding the basin dynamics, which is in particular the physical attributes of the basin and water storability. So basically like what it is formed for or which areas would be better for the groundwater recharge. So those kind of things. So where they fly like an electromagnetic over a basin and then find out those hot spots like which would be better for the recharge.
I believe that's for just to, because the GSPAC has listened to a lot of stuff about AEM, that was for the Scotts Valley component, no?
I think the AEM one it's the Blue Ribbon Committee one, right? It's for the whole county.
Okay,
So include basins over the whole county. In fact, and I think the proposal, Big Valley Basin was listed in there, but also basins like High Valley and Middletown and all of
so
those.
that
The whole-
existing GSPAC members understand when we talked about AM before, it was a DWR program that did the actual Big Valley AEM. And at that time, Scotts Valley was very interested in theirs, but because we have that as part of the modeling with the interflows between the two basins. I thought that it maybe that's what just that clarification is good. But the AEM stuff was done for the Big Valley Basin, and that continues to go on as far as it's called the Basin Characterization Exchange now, where they're really starting to look more at like granular level of detail and everything. We've got amazing program if you want to talk anything they're doing both on our level and the statewide level, just incredible strides they've made in that. So if the AEM is something for the Blue Ribbon and is being done broader, it would be different than the AEM that was initially done for Big Valley.
Yeah.
Just like,
So yeah, I think in this context, I think we are talking about the Scotts Valley because that's what we are interested in. So right now, a request for proposal is currently being developed and is expected to go with the county council to review in next week. And this grant is a priority in terms of timing, and we hope to have a contractor begin the work over the next 6 months.
That's for AEM?
So, yeah, for the AEM for the Scotts Valley.
Is it Scotts Valley or is it, it's more than just Scotts Valley?
No, that project is the whole county. There could be a component that's for Scotts Valley, but DWR did part of Scotts Valley and couldn't get in because there was too much interference.
Cows, right?
Yeah, so that should be just, I think, Upper Lake had some done through Robinson, but Scotts Valley hit barriers because there was restrictions.
and one of the suggestions that I might say is because there is all kinds of good AEM stuff going on, that we clarify that for the GSPAC come December and just kind of like, and also maybe we'll bring a little bit of tidbits of the basin characterization exchange stuff that's going on too that we've learned. Incredible program. Again, check that one out. It's really dynamic and they're really, really making incredible strides. They meet monthly. And fascinating like data and that they go through. The person who is running that is one of my favorite people at DWR. She's super good at what she does and super excited about it. So that's fun.
Helps.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
So a quick question, because we're talking about the interplay between Scotts Valley and Big Valley, right? So if Big Valley goes below minimal threshold, what happens to Scotts Valley?
Well, Scotts Valley is a low priority basin. They are not a basin that is being.
No, what I'm saying is because they're interconnected, will it affect Scotts Valley?
It's not connected by much. You look at the outflows from Scotts Valley.
That's my
West
question.
Valley, so.
Thank you.
But that is why we included it originally as part of the GSP process of looking
Big
at
Valley
things we didn't
model.
know. Yeah.
Includes the Scotts Valley Basin because we were always concerned, like, hey, at some point, if Scotts Valley gets elevated, then we at least have a modeling tool that's includes the entire area. Versus having to go develop another model just for Scotts Valley. So kind of thinking through that a little bit. So
Well, you're asking us to come up with money, and I'm wondering if it should just be Big Valley or if it affects.
I think the money's there. Money's there.
Okay, I'm getting confused.
No, I mean,
Yeah.
you were talking about the plan,
Overall.
right? The
Yeah.
overall, yeah, that's
Also
the,
about operating
yeah.
expenses, keeping all the legislative things, yeah. No. I think that Eddie may have thought that you were talking just about the AEM component of it, but you're talking on a broader scale of if this impacts in some way Scotts Valley, good or bad, like should they be included as part of it? But the basin right now as it exists is the Big Valley Basin. It was just insightful to look at what Scotts Valley had as far as potential interflows with it, and not necessarily more so, I think, for the positive gain of Big Valley in the future with all the flooding and some of the things that were going on in Scotts Valley versus the detriment.
So to
of Big
clarify
Valley.
for me, right now, we're going over all the grants we already have
Correct.
and deciding, but that won't affect how we vote on how we're gonna pay for the continued studies of.
Correct.
Yeah, so I think just a clarification on that. So we have like whenever we are talking about the funding or the projects or the plan itself, we have like two things in that. One is like the project implementation thing, and other is the project plan implementation. So as far as the plan goes, like that has to be worked with the staff or consultant to make a plan, and that's where like it's very hard to get that kind of money from the like any grant unless it's like a new thing. Like when the GSA started, they did DWR did provided like a grant for it. But for the projects, yeah, it's not. I mean, we will project is also not mandatory, so we do the projects only when we get the grant. So we have that option. But as far as the administrative thing goes, like submitting this annual report or the 5-year plan, we don't have an option to not to do it. We have to do it. Yeah. So that's the reason like why we are saying we have to come up with some funding or plan, even though we have bigger projects, but they are not pressing right now. So the other project we have is the Scotch Valley Groundwater Assessment Project. So right now, Todd, like our staff, he's working on the documentation for the project, and it will go to the board in the coming few months. So this is not as ready as the AEM one, but it's in the work. This project,
What documentation?
like working with the like.
Isn't it Eddie was gonna be on that? He was written into that grant project. So is it going to the board to ask to approve the contractor?
Yeah, basically, yeah. I mean, whatever is needed.
Is it more than 100,000?
Uh,
If it's less than 100,000, you can approve it, right?
so I'm guessing it should be more than 100,000.
It was 80,000 in the grant, and then I think there was, because it was so long when the grant was approved to when it got started, there was like a $20,000, like.
Yeah, I don't know very specific about it, but whatever is there, like we are following the county policies. That's the bottom line. So yeah, it will go to board in like coming few months. This project is for the 20, it will take about 24 weeks to implement, which is 6 months, with a targeted start date of April 1st, 2026. So that's when the project, we are anticipating it will start.
Geez, Val.
I thought I turned it off.
Yes.
And I do like the background too.
So we have the project and management action plan, which is start working on right now. So tier 1B is like creating a permanent Big Valley GSA website. So he's been updating things or making a dedicated website for it. And the tier 2 project management thing he's doing is implement Adobe Creek conjunctive use project and rehabilitate Kelsey Creek detention structure. So basically coordinating with the contractors or whatever we need to do with the paperwork. So these things are moving forward. That's the priority he's working on right now. And yeah, we already discussed about the funding thing, with that we will be updating the board or recommending that we need to move ahead with this.
So I have a question for that, which I think the board might ask about. Is there, and maybe this group actually, we should know what the current, so the district, there's currently, we pay property taxes, and there's a portion of that comes to the Watershed Protection District, which does manage the groundwater. I'm wondering what that is, that ratio for how much is within the groundwater basin for Big Valley right now. So, if I live there and I'm gonna vote on, or if I'm gonna get a fee to support the groundwater activities, I wanna know like what already is I'm paying for that go towards the district to do those groundwater activities and other district activities.
So I think
In the basin.
yeah, we do like a monthly well data and the annual well reports from there, like for all the wells around the country.
This is the district fees. How much of my taxes are going toward the district fee for Big Valley Basin? So I know how much more is gonna be going to support groundwater activities. It's not
So how much of the fee you're paying already is going?
Yeah, so the district, everybody pays a little bit that goes to the watershed districts, the whole county. How much of that is specifically for Big Valley Basin? Based on population or area or a combination of both. So we did stormwater. We wanted to see how much how much, is split up when we split up projects between the cities and the county for stormwater. We looked at both population and the area to figure out how much we should split up a project that's like 100 grand or 500 grand, how much we should share it. So I'm wondering, I don't know which is the best way, but for the Big Valley Basin, how much of the district proportion is already going towards activities in the Big Valley Basin based on the population or the area or a combination that's weighted both. The board might want to know that. I think we should know that. And definitely the people that live there are going to want to know, well, how much is already going towards the district to do these activities before we have to pay more to do activities.
I think a starting point would be, is it defined, right? Like, is that
Yeah.
portion, that formula
You can
defined?
find it real easy.
Yeah.
You did it for
It is
stormwater.
defined.
It's defined, yeah, and you just get the latest census data for the population within, have somebody do the GIS of who lives there. And then, again, you can either look at the population, how much the county gets for the district, and you divide it by the population. You can do it by the area, and you can do it by a combination of both. So you can see what that range is for how much of district funds are already going towards,
And if there are
activities.
prioritization of those funds.
Yeah.
That's fair, but I'm guessing right now, like we didn't thought about it before, but because this is like a new thing, like which is coming since 2015. So this is like addition to what people were paying before that. And if those responsibilities still exist, whatever, I mean, that whenever has started, there should be some mandate with those taxes or whatever we get. So these are because the newer thing, so it should be like a newer thing which would be implemented. So in relative terms, I don't think it matters that much, but yeah, board might have question about it and we can figure it out beforehand. Yeah.
And you've worked on 218 stuff, so you know this firsthand, that
Yeah.
the delineation is an important component that the public asks and that the board asks. So well noted that, to go in front of it and to posit it.
And I live there, and we have land there for the land trust, so we want to know what are we already putting forward?
Mhm.
So we know how much, especially if you're asking for there to be forever a new fee to do some activities. It sounds like it's staff time and consultant time. And I would also like dollar amounts for some of the projects too, for the specific tasks, which all exist. Just so we know how much money is coming in to the specific projects in the area. It's a request for the next meeting.
And so it does, we are doing pretty good on time. We've got about, we can turn it over to Eddie to share a little bit more about potential fee projections, if that's of interest, or about.
It's just a refresher from about 2 years ago to give you a sense of what could the fee be, because I mean, at some point people are gonna ask, and so, it's just sort of different ways to kind of divvy up the cost, and so this is data that was included in the original. We can go to that if you want to.
Yeah.
Mention it.
And also because we have new members who weren't here, Rebecca wasn't here, and Angela, you probably tangentially heard some of it, but you weren't part of the GSPAC at that time, so Val and maybe you would have heard it before. But no, I mean, and it was close into us being done with the GSP as well, so.
Is this before public comment or is in public comment?
Before.
No, we'll still.
Okay, so we'll do it.
Always, yeah.
And we're saying that the costs will be the same.
What we're doing here, Val, is giving you an idea of what kind of things, what kind of costs there would be, how you split it out, how you go about approaching this, figuring it out.
So this was presented at December, January
21, December 21, January 2022.
I've changed some things just to, justify my existence, but, since to kind of walk through the process, I mean, the first thing we need to do is obviously establish the revenue needs. So that was kind of done in the GSP. That needs to be dusted off, because it's not just the annual reports, it's the periodic evaluations, there's water level measurements, there's, various things that need to be brought online. So the estimated revenue needs that are in the GSP need to be dusted off at some point. And that's part of the process that Alana will go through and get a contractor on board to sort of get everybody engaged on what those revenue demands need to be. And then the question comes down to kind of cost allocation, like, how are you going to divvy these costs up that Angela, you had mentioned. So I'm going to kind of walk through a couple of slides really quickly. Do you want to go to the next slide? So again, these are just out of the GSP that need to be updated, but these are really the costs related to things outside of the periodic evaluation, and it does not include projects. So if you kind of look at this is how it was developed, it's got GSA administration fees, there's costs to that. And I think that's where Angela was going, was like at some point, you've got fees that are coming in to manage groundwater resources countywide that's specific to Lake County, I mean to Big Valley. You're going to have to do some public outreach to make sure that they're going to say, well, wait a minute, we're already paying our fees. And sort of the response can be, well, these are new fees, but the administration, operations and maintenance, administration, some of the legal expenses are already covered in that. So you're going to have to tease that out a little bit. So when we did this originally in the GSP, because it's required, we were estimating those costs were around 130 to 270,000. Big range, but again, like I said, we're going to refine those. Then you've got the monitoring programs that are needed to support the GSP and other elements. So we kind of estimated water level monitoring, water quality monitoring, subsidence monitoring. We estimated those costs to range from 25,000 to 55,000. And then we also included the annual report, which we estimated would be 20,000 to 50,000. And then obviously the engagement and outreach. Fortunately, a lot of that's covered through DWR today. Is it going to continue? We don't know. So when you kind of add that all up, not the periodic evaluation, at the time it adds up to on average to be about 285,000 a year. Okay. Now go to the next slide. And again, these will all get updated. This was tied to, okay, what needs to happen every 5 years? So every 5 years, we've got the periodic evaluation that needs to be done, and there's some things that need to happen there. This does not include any projects and management actions. This is just to kind of keep the lights on and keep, in DWR's good graces. So you add all these fees up, ends up being about 580,000, or you divide that over the 5-year period, it's about 115,000 a year. That's about 115,000 you need. So when you add up the previous slide, the 285 plus the 115, on average, this was a couple of years ago, we were estimating you need about $400,000 a year to do the administration, the annual reports, the periodic evaluations, the modeling, no projects or management actions. There was money in here, I think, to go after grants. We had $20,000 a year to go with grants. So this is, again, you're going to go through this again at some point, but the estimated revenue was about $400,000 a year. Okay, so you're like, okay, we need $400,000 a year, or 200 or 300, whatever it is. If you go to the next slide, the question is, how do we pay for that? So Pawan's been talking about this 218 process. Again, this was something, 3 years ago, everybody was kind of going the 218 route, which requires a 50% protest. We've seen a bit of a switch in the last year where folks now are switching to this Prop 26, more of like a regulatory fee. So you don't need to vote, but obviously you need to do all the outreach, and there's an engineer's report that's needed to sort of develop the.
Specific to Sigma though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's
Sigma
not a
allows it.
statewide thing, like 218 could be for districts statewide, yeah. Okay.
So that's something we've seen in a couple of basins in the last year. So that's another idea. The other thing we've seen up in, at least in 2 sub-basins is a wellhead fee, or the more, or actually there's one sub-basin where you're charged on how much you pump. There's pluses and minuses to that, but I'm just letting you know these are different ways folks have kind of chopped this up a little bit. So you've got the revenue needs. Now it's how you allocate those costs. So if you go to the next slide, these are just examples. So assuming we need $400,000 a year, right? You've got total acreages that are in the subbasin of about 24,000 acres. Of those 24,000, only 6,000-ish are irrigated, and then the remaining is not irrigated. So in this example, what we're doing is like, okay, if we need 400,000 and we just divide it by the total acreages in the subbasin, everybody pays the same regardless if you irrigate or not. Everybody would pay about $16 an acre. Okay, and this is
A year, a month,
a year. That's what people have done in other areas. Some people said, well, wait a minute, we don't irrigate. The irrigators should pay more because they're benefiting from the groundwater financially. So if you shifted all that now just to the irrigated acreage, the irrigators would have to pay $63 an acre per acre. Okay, and then again, some basins are like, well, wait a minute, the non-irrigators benefit from Sigma or GSP management, so they should pay something. So these next examples are like, okay, well, how much do the non-irrigators want to pay per acre? And again, this is something you'll have to work through. So assuming that they paid 50 cents per acre, then the irrigators would be responsible for, a residual about 390,000. So that would lower their costs down to $61 an acre. And you can kind of play the game. So I went 50 cents, 20 cents, 10 cents per irrigated acre, just to see what the impact would be on the irrigated acreage cost.
So what happens if you just own a lot? Do you have to have a whole acre to have to pay this, or do you just own Angela's lot? Her house is on them?
Yeah, so there's different ways. So some GSAs say, you know what, it's not worth the hassle, the paperwork to deal with somebody who's on a third of an acre. So we're not even gonna assess fees if it's less than 5 acres. I mean, these are things that you kind of have to get some legal input on. So there's ways to kind of do that. But I mean, all you're really doing is, and you kind of mentioned this previously, is this is the revenue you need. How do you allocate it? Do you want to go just look at lots that are bigger than 5 acres? Do you want to go irrigated versus non-irrigated? I mean, these are the things you kind of have to work through, and that's part of the fee process that'll be done when you get a consultant on board to help you navigate that.
I think, this is 218, but I think vector control has like a minimum flat rate. I think it's like 15 for everybody, and then depending on certain parcels, it's more, I think.
Yeah.
So there's another way to do it too. It's like
There's different ways to kind of choose it.
year for everybody baseline, and then I think it's adds up.
But if we are not including, so let's say residential lots or something, then the acreage will change because this is the whole basin, right?
This is the whole
And
subject. Yeah.
so the rates would be different or higher.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're talking about.
And then the state doesn't have to pay this either. And that's another thing you can kind of suck out of it. The state doesn't have to pay.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, if there's state acres,
You don't have to pay.
there isn't state acres.
But what's the land trust? Isn't that state?
No, but we don't irrigate, but still it'd be, we have a 283 parcel or, so that's like 5,000.
Who owns their interest then?
Nonprofit land trust, nonprofit.
Non-profit.
501(c).
So that would have to be, whoever is the consultant for this would have to figure out what are those.
But of course, also federal doesn't pay for this is all,
Yeah,
but,
there are exemptions to all of it.
so that would be the tribes.
They would try to.
The more exemptions you have, the more that the people.
Yeah, the burden's on the rest of the.
And I think there is some thought to the process of like, the acreage of farms is hiring people. I mean, there's a lot of people that rely on that income from, let's say, an agriculture farm where you've got, if they close down because they can't afford to pay this.
Yeah.
Then there's people out of work, people don't come visit our wineries. I mean, there's a lot of things that factor in besides just feeling like, well, they should pay it. We should,
There's a benefit.
Yeah.
Even if you don't irrigate, there's a benefit.
And and that's a huge reason why, again, make the plug for the advisory committee being so important, right? Is to think through those things. I remember Dave at one point had talked about, that he's here to advocate for both the workers and for the, the ag component of it. And just sitting and thinking, and also the public input, right? Like having opportunities for the public to think through this and to have input. Because the alternative is really, if you don't come up with something and you don't figure out how to fund it, the state will step in. To the state board to
it's pretty hard for me as a layperson to figure this out.
Yeah.
And, for a couple of 100 acres, that's not that bad, but if somebody owns 1,000 acres or 10,000 acres. And we just did a tour of one of the vineyards because we went up and looked at land trust property and they gave us access through, and they've closed down they've ripped out half the vines. So, we're not looking at agriculture's having issues right now, am I right?
Yeah.
Just,
It percolates.
I'm just throwing these
and
things out
everything
there
else.
because, we don't want to put people out of business and we don't want homeowners to, be more poor. We're the poorest county, second poorest county in the state, I think. So this is a lot to ask.
Yeah, looking at Big Valley, the impact of the socioeconomic status of Big Valley, that's always been a high component, and not receiving any of the round two funding money to be able to be supportive of it, and not knowing what Prop 4 money will look like, right? We don't have a concept of what that's going to support or do. So a lot of.
What I would like to see is the possibility of thinking a percentage of this because I don't, I'm just gonna throw this out there. Reason Land Trust hired Angela is because we looked at how many grants she got for the county, right? We're going, we want those, right?
It's a good ROI.
Yeah. So, I'm just saying that I know that there's possibilities to go out and some of our grants are planning grants. So, To your horn a little bit, but I just would like to see a percentage of that said, yeah, I think we can at least attempt to go after something besides maybe that grant that we didn't get from DWR.
Yeah, I just don't know, because this is all administration, not projects at all. So it's like, can you get a grant to cover the admin of this work? I don't know what would be
But
out.
also, what obligation does the county have to pay for some of it?
Well, the reason why we went after the countywide fee assessment for the district was to generally just increase the fees for the whole district to support maybe a groundwater coordinator for the whole county that could do a lot of this. We have grants it's 400,000. The last time I was at the county and did investigation, the whole district fees, the incoming fees for the district, not Lake Bed, was 600,000. So that's 75% of what the whole district makes for the whole county. And that's stormwater unfunded mandate, just like this. Flood control, like besides the flood zones, which probably total like 100,000, 150,000 total. So there's not much wiggle room. And that's why it was like, we have to do a sustainable funding plan for the whole entire county. And that's why we did the assessment fee to investigate the possibility of that for the whole county, not just doing Big Valley. And my recommendation has always been for the past meetings, don't do this investigation or this effort at the same time for the whole county. You're going to jeopardize them both. No one's going to want either of them. You're going to get horrible pushback. So my question was to go on for the next meetings, ask the status of that assessment fee, and what the public even thought about for supporting projects. It was stormwater, it was floodwater, it was water quality. I think it had some groundwater, like.
Some of it, but like if we are like whole assessment, we are collecting about $500,000. We can't pay 400,000 out of that just for Big Valley thing. So that's hard truth. Like, I mean, yeah, we are collecting it, but it comes with a mandate to maintain the stormwater system. So,
But I think where you're going with this, I think, can you go back one more? Maybe one more. I think like this, I mean, not a lot of money, but it's
You
something.
guys have grants for all of that right now.
This would be covered and some of this would be covered. I think that's what.
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
So that if that 400,000 can go to 200,000 because of some of your work,
Right.
then there's a benefit to that.
And every grant, at least when I wrote, there was a lot of this could overlap. Like right now, whatever Todd's doing for outreach, all of that can be put under. There's 2 option grant. There's definitely 5 or 10,000 to do outreach, build a website, do marketing, go out and do town halls. Like there's money already.
That's there, but that's the outreach for that particular thing we have asked for. That doesn't cover the website which is needed for GSA.
Yeah, but that grant covers.
Yeah, because the grant which is come with some commitment. So even though we have written like an outreach for it, some of you can double count it, but that comes with its own mandate. We can't say we will have an outreach for something and do the outreach only for GSA.
No, I think that there is some economies of scale.
Yeah.
And you have a grant to.
Yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like there would be overlap, but we can't say that everything would be covered. So there is like 2 components it where on the project side, yeah, we can count it. We can double count it because it's written in there and we can count that projects toward the GSA. But as far as the project administration goes, I think it's the part of this GSA thing that it has to come from there because as far as unless it's something which the board provides us with additional money, which it doesn't come with its own commitment, but almost all grants come like that unless it's a grant dedicated.
I actually understand that,
Yeah.
but I sort of think what's not figured into this is the possibility of what percentage of that could go to groundwater monitoring or the website or whatever. And I'd like to see that before we have to decide. Do we have time?
I think that would be part of what and Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong, what the 218 contractor would do would be looking, like these numbers, like we said, they've been dusted off just the smallest way since the 2021 meeting. This isn't like a full 218 process evaluation of what revenue needs exist. And that would come once that 218 contractor was under. But what I'm hearing is that there are opportunities to maybe lower this cost a little bit. Based on existing grants that exist, and that also at the same time, a sustainable funding source is needed to be found to support GSA administration activities. So both are true that there's existing grants that can be economies of scale and a long-term sustainable funding source is needed.
So I'm not sure what I'm supposed to vote on.
Sal, you're not
Voting on anything, it's just information.
But I thought we were supposed to send
No,
the reference.
think of this like a case study, and what Eddie's trying to do is show you the method that you figure these things out, but this is not it. This is not the hard and fast numbers. These were our past numbers. So I think, Pawan, leaving it up to you of what you really want to do, but I think that, going in front of the board and talking to them about where we're at with everything right now, I think that the idea that Pawan and Todd had was that they could present, hey, 218 probably gives us a good path forward to do it. Can we go ahead and get that contractor on board to be able to look at all of, this type of stuff? Or do they have special funds themselves, the supervisors? Or what of the grant, like I agree that showing the wins of the things that have happened already would be really good too. But you're not voting on this right now, Val. And in fact, you're not voting for yes, we'll do 218 or no, we won't. It's the guidance that you're providing your board of directors in order to start to think through how they can make sure there's funding for this.
Okay, so I guess my thing is, this has been on, the agenda for a long, long time, over and over and over again, and I'm not sure what to do about it.
Yeah, and I think that's why, like I mentioned it, like to make it like a little bit clear that whenever we talk about we have other grants or something, yeah, it's there, but it doesn't cover the thing we are talking about here right now.
Maybe some of them.
Yeah, some of them can overlap, but that is like when we talk about other grants can cover it, we are mixing multiple things together, and which is probably creating confusion or like an illusion saying, oh, maybe this is covered here, but that's not the case. I think we have to come up with a plan which sustains all these activities here. So we need to think in that direction. Yeah,
So
we
I'm on
will
the
definitely, we will.
That's supposed to, come up with some sort of decisions. And we're getting the same information over and over again. I sort of don't know what I'm doing. That's what I'm trying to say. I know that, well, that's just the way I feel.
No, fair point. Rebecca, I do want you to jump in here.
So,
I think Rebecca's gonna.
Oh, I just have a question for Eddie. We talked a little bit about the exemptions for state-owned property, federal-owned, and sovereign nation-owned property. So if we went with like a 218, Prop 218 auction, those landowners wouldn't receive ballots at all, right? So that would subtract from the percentage of ballots that need to come back in protest, right?
Yep.
The threshold wouldn't be as high.
It's still 50%.
Right.
Of the
but-
remaining that
Of
we
the
receive
remaining,
out.
the
per
threshold
cap,
is low. Yeah.
And then also, I think this is correct, but I think the only specific groundwater grant that was applied for by the district was the phase 2 for the location. I know there's never been one submitted specifically for groundwater stuff for Blue Ribbon Committee, besides the Scotts Valley High, and part of the AEM, which is groundwater, but that's for the whole. There's never been a ground, so as someone that might be paying into this, I would want to know, oh, what have been the efforts, the grant efforts, specifically for groundwater? The board of supervisors, I want to know that too. Well, how much has been sought after? So if you've applied for 10 years for $10 million, not got any of the grants, okay, maybe we need to fork some money up, to be able to support that. So I think that's something else to be cognizant
That's a
of.
good point. And also, I know that somewhere there exists the tally of how much that DWR has put in today between the GSP development of the actual plant itself, the FSS support, the TSS support, all of those things too, to show that, there is good faith money that's been put
Right.
forward by DWR. And, the round 2 thing was a huge gut punch for everyone here, like just a surprise. And I do agree with you. I think it's the only thing that, and Marina was one who largely put it together on her own. So, it was a considerable heavy lift to do it too. But, I think one, I'll leave this in your campus too, like how you want to proceed forward with it. But do you want to talk a little bit about the board of supervisors, just update of just kind of like what you intend to chat with them about?
Yeah, so basically, like, as we have this need here, like, we have to come up with this, and then we can also update about projects we have. Also, not the one which we already got for the plan itself, but also the project, like the implementation thing, all these grants we have. So in that phase, probably it does seems like we did had quite a few. And this is like, again, like as I mentioned earlier, that this is not about the project itself, because those are the higher cost items. These are the bare minimum we are talking about. Even this 400,000 includes just the plan updates, right? The annual updates we are talking about, not the amendments. So yeah, at the end of the day, like we can apply for a grant, we can look for other things, but we have to make some progress if we want to keep um, ourselves in with the regulations. Like we do have to come up with some funding source where we can keep moving forward. And again, I think this is like just the consultant side of it because the department is still putting in the staff time and other things, which has not been part of this thing yet. So
This includes
So-
administration, which is staff time. Is that correct? Yes. So that is includes the staff administration.
yeah, okay.
So to circle back to Val, your question, and you ask it every time, and I love that you do. I literally hear your voice in the back of my mind, so it could be to help put the agenda together and everything. But no, I think that, now it's taking this information that's been discussed here to the board. There hasn't been a board update in quite a while. They're very savvy about what it all is, every single one of them. So then, Pawan and Todd will go to update them. We can be supportive of them from the presentation deck and putting it together and that type of thing through the FSS funding, and telling them, here are the options, here's the need, and kind of getting their feel for it, because ultimately they're the ones who say, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Okay, so this is in the valley, in the, Big Valley watershed is 800.
It's the basin. Yeah, the groundwater basin.
That's what I meant.
This slide is another example where I didn't finish it, but if we just look, instead of acreage, you could look at it by wells. So there's about 900 wells in the sub-basin. So if you wanted to charge a wellhead fee, that would be kind of how it would look. And then this is just another way you could look at it instead of acreage. So that's the.
So every person with a well would pay $450.96 a year.
Exactly.
So I think it's important, just we're talking about Pawan going to the Board of Supervisors and you potentially providing support as in the present form of a presentation. I think that it's important, of course, the Water Resources Department will present what they feel they need to, but it's important that there's kind of somewhat of a consensus in terms of recommendation, which is what I think Val's getting to. And to me, the consensus is that we want to minimize the cost on landowners, wellhead owners, however it's allocated as much as possible.
And the board's gonna want that too. They
Sure.
don't want, especially in this
Sure.
climate, they're not gonna want
Yeah.
additional
Thank
costs going on to the big
I got
valley.
you.
Thank you.
I think everyone is in agreement with that.
Yeah.
But it bears noting, right? And when we take your notes and provide them to Pawan to elevate to the board as the guidance from all of you, all of these things are noted so that they understand what the discussion points are and who's been considered and what's been considered and all those things. And then ultimately they can make an informed decision out of them.
And to me, what that looks like is trying to get this figure down as much as possible through research on other potential grants prior to the presentation to the Board of Supervisors. Like, we've done the work and we've minimized this as much as possible. And now this is the dollar figure that we would need to secure through Prop 218 or Prop 26 or other funding types. Not just, well, this is what we need and we're completely unsure of how we can get any of it.
I think you're gonna say what I'm gonna say, so go ahead.
Well, we go for it, Kristen.
I was just gonna say, we need to be careful that whatever numbers are here, whatever numbers we're jockeying around aren't necessarily the numbers. That's what the contractor would help to decide, or Water Resources would decide for the Prop 26 level, or the request to supervisors, do you have any special funds? Can we avail ourselves of cannabis funds? Whatever it is internally, yeah, and they're done every single time, I know. Dibs on that. But so those are the kind of things that Water Resources needs to figure out as they go forward. But I don't think that any of these numbers are insightful or anything. Like, anyone who think about models,
They're all wrong.
yeah, they're all wrong. Like, some are useful. So these are just all for discussion point where you really start to see what those dollar amounts is, and lessening it is everyone's intent. Is when you have somebody really start to do your projections and streamline them. And you have a full evaluation of what the County Board of Supervisors can pony up. And you have full understanding of what your budget limitations are from the Watershed Protection District.
So in the budget, is there money for this consultant that you're talking?
A Pawan question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
No.
To do the 218. So that would be part of the request to the Board of Supervisors, perhaps would be one way to go about it, is we need to better understand what these numbers are. The department can to some degree look at these numbers and crosswalk where there are efficiencies to be found with existing grants. But it's still gonna be ballpark until that contractor is on board. And so that's part of that.
I think it's incredibly problematic to bring it to the board and work it backwards that way.
Well, there's no,
I mean, I just think that to me, it would be necessary to do the smaller component, which would be identifying and working with the contractor to see what the pathways are forward, rather than coming to the board with a Prop 218 ask or Prop 26 ask, and then hiring a contractor on the backside of that. I don't think that's in the best interest of anybody in the Big Valley Basin.
So Rebecca, your suggestion would be to have a more limited contract with somebody at the first part of it to look at what the pros and cons are
Absolutely.
of different options.
I mean, if it's done the other way, the number will be at least twice as much.
and is having a limited contract to just understand the potential revenue cost, something that's, like, have you seen other scopes done that way?
It's still $15,000. Find somebody to help kind of flesh that out. But I would also recommend, like, you all know your sub-basin, you know where the pockets of money are. Don't hire me to come in and get educated about that. I mean, if you could take the template, I'll send it to you, and you guys could flush it through and say, well, here's what we think realistic is a budget. Start with that. Don't hire somebody to come in and start putting their numbers on there, because it'll be higher.
Yeah.
I mean,
And they'll
there's
charge you to
never
just
one
understand
option,
this.
and that's what this feels like to me.
Yeah.
So again,
There's never just one option, and that's what this feels like to me.
So a discovery of what the options are and what the pros and cons
Right.
are
And what
in a
other-
limited basis, at least to be insightful enough prior to the board.
Right.
How quickly, one, that's gonna be kind of your appetite and staff's time and everything else to understand what that is. If, trying to think through like the avenue ahead of board of supervisors and then the next meeting, which is December 11th. Everybody should have it on the calendar. So I'm just seeing things to think about.
Yeah, I mean, we will see, like, we can figure it out, like, and see, like, whenever we can get it, maybe we go to the board accordingly, like saying, we get that information first, and then we go to the board. Like, if we are not able to get it by December, then we can go on to the board update then. I mean, that's.
So if you were gonna go the more limited route, like kind of what Rebecca was talking about vetting it out in the front, it may be an ask to the board in the short term of, can we go forward with this? Because from you, I've heard that you don't even have budget to be able to free up a $15,000 kind of thing.
So that's the thing, but I think what we are asking board is not for a number, right? Like, we are asking, because regardless, we know that we will have to get some money in through the prop route. We are not asking board to, definitely board will have some question regarding what numbers we are talking about. But we are asking for the board to go ahead with the process and figure it out, like how much it is. Like, is that?
But I think what Rebecca's saying is, rather than asking them to proceed forward with the 218 process, could we do an interim step of discovering all of the options that are available in the front end? And then once this group has probably looked at that, would probably be advisable, then to elevate that to the board to say, hey, we looked at the 5 key clear ways. And the other kind of asset of that too is that you may be a little farther down into the Prop 4 funding and understand it in a little bit greater context. Now, that's never a given, and your award of anything would not be well until after, 2026, like the beginning Q1 of 2026. I don't know what timing. I don't think that these folks either know the timing.
It makes sense to me to spend $15,000 now to potentially save $100,000, right? Makes sense to me to do that if you save $30,000. Like, as long as there's some sort of cost savings there, I think that makes sense. So.
I mean, we did it as part of the GSP. So, I mean, I really think for like, I'm not looking for work, but I think if I came, or my team came down in a room with a couple of key people around this table, we could come up with a table that
Of everything that exists.
that we feel we could agree on, like, hey, we think we can shave this off. I think it could be done relatively efficiently. I mean, Angela, what do you think?
I don't know, I'm not in the county anymore, so it's really technically not my.
No, but you would be sitting at the table to help look at, like, hey, you know what, we think we could take some of this monitoring fund, we could borrow from other areas that you know about. I mean, I don't think it's as heavy lift to dust that off, because we had to do it initially for the
I mean,
GSP.
That's the approach for every single thing that we do. Stormwater is an unvetted mandate. And we were able to scratch together like $2 million to $3 million over 5 years to meet things in stormwater, meet our TMDL compliance, figure out how to do. And that money's still coming in and still being spent. And that was even with a $500,000 match from the sport supervisors. We were able to get them to put that. So it's all patchwork, and it covered administration and it covered other things. And so like that's the approach, is you have to figure out. But in order for us to do that, is we have to figure out what are the needs, what are we bringing in already, what kind of grants are out there, what grants do we not get? That's the other, is there's not grants, you can't get grants to make a position for the county. We can't make a groundwater coordinator. The grants won't do that. The county won't support that. So you have to figure out how do you support that position through administrative funds and combination of other things and make it sustainable. So like, and you gotta figure out how to do that. I don't know if one meeting kind of figures that out, but
Meetings and a couple of workshops, so whatever, yeah, but I think that could be fleshed out.
you need your accountants, you need your staff that's actually working in it, you need your consultant. Yeah, and you need all your grants, all the money you have.
I think that's the things you have to do your homework on before you arrive at
Yeah.
the table.
And you also have to demonstrate you've been spending money that you have before you ask the community and the board for more money to do stuff. If you're not, and right now it seems like there's a staff capacity. So maybe doing everything through consultants is a shorter term, more realistic pathway. And that is more expensive, but it's, you have capacity issues.
The other thing I do want to bring up is that the periodic evaluation is due 2027, which is quickly approaching. And so in order to make sure there is a contractor on board to ensure that contractor needs to be on board early 26.
If you're doing 2018, like there is some serious tax roll stuff that has to happen and it has to unspool and be
And
known.
even just getting the contractor on
Yeah.
board to do the thing would have to happen.
Correct.
Yeah, and then if you have the tax roll, that would also need to happen in 26 too, is your point. And so that doesn't give us a lot of time.
You don't have to do that in order to get some money to do the periodic evaluation though.
No.
So the periodic evaluation needs to be done regardless.
Right.
You don't have to do the funding assessment and get funding for stuff to come in order for that to get.
I mean,
There's not any other current funding for the evaluation.
there's not any, or we don't have any lined up.
What,
Yeah,
how would you define the distinction between?
Meaning we don't have any like.
It
known,
doesn't exist
like,
at all, or we don't have it.
It is not something that is known to exist in our world currently. Now, the Prop 4 funding stuff could change the dynamic of that entirely, but again, that is a gamble of, are you going to get it or are you not? And that's just.
Would an evaluation
it
would
would
be
take-
allowable under it?
And by the time you would actually secure that funding, after you go through the whole like contract and all of that kind of stuff, would be well and away, you'd be.
And maybe it makes sense for the ask to the board of supervisors be to supplement the income to perform the periodic evaluation while we work on a longer term funding plan.
Support the next 2 years of funding, which would include the periodic evaluation, the monitoring, and then see all the grants that you have that match up that could help with that, what the staff is currently doing. And then within that period, there'll be 15,000 that could go towards investigating the long-term funding.
What I might
It's a great
suggest
solution.
is to keep on the timing and to keep with the pace of this, what I might suggest to you and to Todd and to your department is to call a special meeting of this GSPAC if you need to, in order to come up with what the final ask is of the board or what you're going to, the update stuff, I think you've got well in hand of updating them. But, and then maybe move through that quickly so that by December coming back, the board could have made some decisions that would then help this group start to be able to make some actions, as Val said too.
And I mean, what would be the least favorable case scenario would be that the department presents something and then we have members of the GSPAC that disagree and provide public comment, right? And then that paints our group as.
So an ad hoc meeting maybe of putting that together, looking to the feasibility of what could the contractor do and not do to be able to assist you in that. You'd have to probably move quickly through it in the month of September.
And I think the timeline we are at, I think probably to me, it seems like if the boards put in some money in, would be the most likely scenario, because we have to comply with this regulation, right? And then we are already in September almost, so I don't see like whether it would be practical to put something in November, get these funds in. So, I mean, that's the best route I can see right now. So,
Just move quickly. I mean, that's, obviously, to just move quickly.
The fastest you could probably have a revenue, like a Prop 26, 218 money coming in. If you wanted to get that implemented, you'd have to have a contractor on board in December, January, and then they could get that through the system by what, I think it's September, June or July or August.
August is the actual.
I would pull on
Maybe
what
for
your
26.
president was talking about is asking the board of supervisors for supplementary funds to
Yeah,
get our
Okay,
requirements
yeah.
finished while we work on a longer term project without necessarily rushing and making poor decisions.
yeah.
And that initial ask would be the 2 annual reports in that 2-year time period. And then, because you've already done one for this year, so 20, which is actually the year behind, so let's be really confusing. So you 25 and 26 annual reports, and then also that periodic update as well.
And based on that, like whatever we can cover, and I mean, if the board provides it, we have like a backup kind of thing. So we will use it as much as needed. It's not that we use, it's not like a grant, like the money still remains with the county.
If you do decide to pursue it that way and want to call an ad hoc just to, inform everybody, kind of get the final yep stamp, that's what we're going to do. That's the guidance from everyone. If you do that ad hoc meeting, our support's for these actual GSPAC meetings, but it would have to be Brown Act compliant as well. Just something to note that it would have to be in public, for them to understand, which is good too, because you could kind of suck it back to understanding it at that level, that if you had a member of the public, that it would be clear to them as well. So,
So that math is about 235,000 for the 2 years for the annual report. At 40 grants, the 130 for the periodic evaluation, about 25 for your admin, for your staff and any monitoring over the 2 years. So that's a pretty big ask. Again, that might be different, but that's like a rough estimate.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the option board has to make, like either they put in the money or they move forward the 218 process, otherwise we won't be compliant with the.
Even if you move forward with the 218 tomorrow, earliest you're gonna see that revenue is gonna be this time next year.
The water quality 218 that we started, we got the grant for that in 2019, or approved in 2019, got it granted in 2021, and that still isn't done yet. Or at least, I mean, that's the whole county, that's for water quality, and that was with the questionnaire, but
For the timeline, still would be roughly the same. Yeah, it will take long.
You can do it in 8 months, but you gotta have somebody on board in January.
yeah, you're gonna get pushback from the board about, yes. Okay, yeah, they pretty sorry. I have one item for public comment. Sorry if you're missed. It's a request actually, so if Sarah wasn't here, I was gonna ask her if she's here, but at the next meeting in December, if we can ask Sarah to do an update. They got about, Big Valley Rancheria got about $1 million from the Blue Ribbon Committee to do specific projects on Adobe Creek, and one is a watershed dependent or groundwater dependent ecosystem.
Yeah.
And also a restoration project on Adobe Creek. So I think they have been contracted. I'm not sure, but it would be good because coordinating and knowing what's going on in the basin, it would be good to have an update on those because I think Rebecca being one of the only ones that are on the Blue Ribbon Committee and have updates from that. So if we can ask Sarah to either talk about that, provide an update, or tell us a timeline when they can do an update, so this group can know what's going on in the Big Valley Basin.
And I did receive the comprehensive slide deck from Sam of all the projects from the formation of the Blue Ribbon Committee up to date, so I could see that, Sam McGill.
Yeah.
So, I got to send that so that we could use that to plug into some of these holes.
That'd be part of any
And
meeting.
start marking our.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that'll also help if you're going to ask for money from somewhere, look for something, you can say how many projects or funds have come in the county that are, there's a gap missing for groundwater stuff for things.
Thank you, Angela. Any other public comments?
No, except the fire is up at Adobe Creek. Right.
I know, I had to text my husband to go get my kid at daycare because they're right next to him.
So we probably all need to go.
Yeah, go. Thank you so much, as always, for all of your time.